Dear fellow human being, my name is Ronald Weikl. At the very beginning of this new year 2024, I feel compelled to record this short video address in which I, as a doctor but also as a father and grandfather, address you here in Germany and in all other countries worldwide with the greatest concern. 4 years of COVID have opened the eyes of many of us and allowed us to gain deeply sad insights into the current state of our country, our continent of Europe, even our home planet Earth and the humanity living here. In this process, we have also gained deep insights into the structures of power, so that we must bitterly recognize how everything is entangled and in disarray. And the essence of these insights is this: Earth and the people living on it are dominated and exploited by a small clique of ultra-rich figures. They have offered themselves to the dark forces and, with their nefarious machinations, have led humanity and the world far away from the divine mission of creation. We must now face painfully frightening, even shocking, realizations and facts, e.g. the realization that the so-called corona pandemic was deliberately planned and used to lead people even further into immaturity and dependency, to take away their freedom and other important basic rights, to damage their health, to take the last money out of their pockets in order to let it go directly into the sacks of the exploiting oppressors. Are you, dear fellow human being, like me, outraged by the fact that the so-called gain-of-function research is being carried out in umpteens of laboratories worldwide, wasting billions of taxpayers' money collected from us? Gain-of-function research by which pathogens are made more acute, more aggressive, deadlier, so that they can be used against humans like the laboratory-made SARS-CoV-2 virus. Are you also upset about the fact that medicine is dominated by pharmaceutical corporations, which in turn are owned by the same power clique and siphon off most of the healthcare system's money through patent-owned, expensive pharmaceutical products and technologies? And that this kind of technocratic medicine does anything but strengthen or restore people's health, but on the contrary makes people even sicker, weaker and more dependent. How do you feel about the fact that agriculture is also controlled by the interests of agrochemical and seed companies working with genetic engineering, and that not only a large part of the added value in food production flows back directly into the pockets of large corporations, but that this resource-exploiting agricultural industry is also increasingly destroying the vital nature that surrounds us, thus causing severe suffering to our Mother Earth? How do you feel when you realize that completely irrational narratives, such as the allegedly man-made climate change, are intended to distract from this destruction of nature, environment and exploitation of the Earth, also in order to restrict people more and more and to lead them into impoverishment with ever new tax impositions? And when you realize that this also serves the purpose of making people more willing to accept digital money, which is touted to us as a state-allocated handout under the term unconditional basic income, but is ultimately intended to lead to our complete expropriation and dispossession, accompanied by the reassuring promise, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. I know this is often dismissed as a conspiracy theory to ridicule people like me or perhaps you who are upset or worried about this and want to change these conditions. Surely most people have learned by now that the term conspiracy theory and many more of these derogatory expressions and terms that we are eagerly being labeled with, such as right-wing extremist, anti-Semitic, conspiracy theorist, Querdenker, that's a German word, means like outside-the-box thinker, have been deliberately developed and compiled by perfidious system propagandists to denigrate us. But this ridiculous game has long been comprehended and no longer has any effect. And those who continue to do so should admit to themselves how they have been allowing themselves to be misled and have thus been serving a totalitarian system, even if they call themselves anti-fascist. This naturally raises the question, who orchestrated all this? I think these bitter, extremely sad realizations and facts have now made us aware that, especially in COVID times, the very people who have thought of little simulation games for us, such as Great Reset or Agenda 2030, are the sole profiteers of all these circumstances and are therefore undoubtedly assumed to be the string pullers of this shameful agenda. This agenda probably has been holding the world in its grip for decades, if not centuries. Thanks to COVID, we have now been painfully made aware of how the strings and entanglements of this power clique are reaching into all areas of our society and influencing our daily lives. They bought the major media outlets and turned them into propaganda machines, and they even use our tax money to finance the brainwashing they carry out through perfidious psyops. They deliberately stir up conflict between countries and population groups to incite them to war and violence, even to start a third world war, which again only serves their own interests, according to the motto divide et impera, divide and rule. They pursue their business also by selling weapons and even resulting in death and destruction. They use supposedly humanitarian organizations such as the WHO and the UN for their nefarious purposes. They have been corrupting science and research and even been infiltrating the judiciary and the jurisdiction. They have uprooted people, taken away their homes and promoted globalization such as a promise of salvation, and they are also trying by all means to make it as difficult as possible for people to connect with God. They now even started to destroy the very core of society, the families, e.g. by increasingly taking away parents' decision-making authority over their children, e.g. by forcing children from an early age on to undergo supposedly necessary health measures such as vaccinations, which severely disrupt the development of body's own immune system. They propagate nonsensical educational measures such as early sexualization, which robs children of essential developmental phases, making it increasingly difficult for them to develop their independence and their dormant talents. The aim is to train children to become system-compliant consumers and crowd followers right from the start. According to renowned experts, such as investigative journalist David Sørensen, the early sexualization measures propagated by the WHO also put children at even greater risk of becoming victims of sexual violence and abuse. Also, this leads to pedophilia becoming more and more socially acceptable. Why? Investigative journalist David Sørensen has been speaking about this at a press symposium in Munich on the topic of institutional assaults on our children, which I have linked to again in this description of this video. Sørensen says, pedophilia, including ritualized child abuse, is part of the lifestyle of these so-called power elites. But how can we, as parents, just allow this to happen? And even if you don't have children yourself, you can't knowingly condone these brutal attacks on children, the most vulnerable group of people and the future basis of our society. How do you feel realizing that this clique of megalomaniacal people even brags in public of how they have, in the Cato Fortress of the World Economic Forum, successfully prepared countless young global leaders and shapers for their employment? And not only that, how they have occupied the majority of decision-making positions in politics and society with them, thus winning them over and infiltrating parliaments worldwide. After all, this is what has enabled them to implement there's no other way to put it, I'm afraid, satanic plans throughout the world. Don't you agree that now is the time for each and every one of us to get involved according to our very own individual abilities, so that we will be able to free ourselves and the whole of humanity from this bondage and dependency and put a permanent end to this wretched state of affairs? We must take action in obligation to ourselves, but also in our responsibility to all future generations. That is why we must address all the puppets and followers of this exploitative system with clear, unambiguous messages. To all these politicians, heads of state, decision makers, religious and church leaders, who know fully well that they have not been acting upon the interests of the people entrusted to them, but instead have been allowing themselves to be bought and harnessed to this diabolical agenda, we must address our ultimate call to all of them. Resign immediately. Give up your position. You are to clear it for people who can take responsibility in love for their fellow human beings with heart and mind and also plenty of backbone. Admit to your abject failure and face up to your responsibility, including the one before a proper court of law. Step back and surrender before it is too late, before the anger of the people has grown to infinity and might erupt against you in a then uncontrollable manner. You know very well that the clock is ticking and your time has long been up. Dear fellow human being, I do not want to discourage you in any way with my remarks. On the contrary, I want to call on you and motivate you to use this new year 2024 to get involved so that we can make 2024 the year of success for humanity and finally free ourselves from the shackles of the dark forces. I ask you, all of you, to work together in this spirit with your personal commitment to work together in your own country, but also internationally with all other countries on this earth, and to do everything possible by peaceful, non-violent means to help eradicate this criminal system from our planet for good. Protest actions such as those currently being carried out by the farmers in Germany are a good start and offer an excellent opportunity to show solidarity and send a clear signal to the supposedly powerful that their time has finally run out. If we unite as people in this country, but also across borders, indeed worldwide as a human family, we can manage to heal the wounds of the earth and humanity and free them once and for all from the clutches of evil. We can hereby certainly rely on the necessary help from the good powers, the help of God. And so I dream, indeed, I visualize and look forward with confidence now, at the beginning of this new year 2024, to a soon good transition into a new time in which we, all people, can live together in peace and freedom on our home planet Earth, in respect for all our fellow creatures, in which every person can develop their full potential and all people will have a fair share in the fullness of divine creation. I thank you, all of you, for your contribution already, and with this in mind, I wish you and all of us a happy, blessed, successful, and prosperous New Year 2024. Thank you.